Now let's turn to the U.S., where the Biden administration is taking what it views as a balanced approach to that conflict. On one hand, asserting Israel's right to defend itself from attack. On the other, urging it to keep civilian casualties in Gaza to a minimum, but also upping its calls for a ceasefire. But there is disagreement in the Democratic Party in general over the conflict. Now here's what Republican Senate Minority Leader Senator Mitch McConnell had to say about that.
But we're already seeing some push the false narrative that this conflict is a tragic dispute between two legitimate combatants, where both sides share blame that is roughly equal. What nonsense. The United States needs to stand foursquare behind our ally. And President Biden must remain strong against the growing voices within his own party that create false equivalence between terrorist aggressors and a responsible state defending itself.
Well, for more, we're now joined from Washington by Haley Sofer, CEO of the Jewish Democratic Council of America. And Haley, let's give you a chance to respond to what Senator McConnell had to say, but break down his comment. First of all, acknowledging, as he says, President Biden standing strong behind Israel. I mentioned there's a kind of sort of balanced approach. Give us an assessment on how you feel the Biden administration is handling the situation.
Well, thanks, Kayla, for having me. It's clear that President Biden and the overwhelming majority of Democrats have not wavered on the fundamental pillars of the U.S.-Israel relationship. In this time of crisis, Democrats support Israel's right to self-defense, especially as it's under attack by a terrorist organization, and no one is conflating Hamas with anyone else, whether it be the Palestinian people or the IDF, certainly. And Democrats support U.S. aid to Israel, which includes those Iron Dome interceptors that are saving countless Israeli lives every day. So while there may be some difference in the party, some voices of division, that doesn't undercut these core issues about which the Democratic Party is unified. And that is that Israel does have the right to self-defense as it's under attack, and that we support Israel's security.
Right. Now, of course, you mentioned the divisions in the party. You have to acknowledge there were those expected voices from the party's progressive or left-wing or far left-wing, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, who are making some of the equivalences that you discussed. But there are other voices we're starting to hear in the party. I'll give you one example. Representative Gregory Meeks, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, someone who's generally seen as I would say pro-Israel, but he did say yesterday that he would ask the Biden administration to potentially delay an arms delivery of precision-guided weapons, perhaps until this conflict is ended. So how concerned are you that if this conflict continues, some of those attitudes in the sort of more left-wing, progressive wing may start filtering into more of the mainstream party that you've been talking about?
I'm not concerned. We have had a minority of voices and views on Israel with which the majority, whether it be the leadership in the House and Senate or in the White House itself or the Democratic Party and our party platform, don't agree with. And as it relates to Chairman Meeks, he is no longer putting a hold. He was not putting a hold on that delivery of military assistance, that sale to Israel, scheduled for sometime next year, so it wasn't even going to impact this conflict. But that is something about which he has just clarified in the past few hours that is not any longer going forward. But, you know, the concerns that you have heard from Democrats, whether it be from Chairman Meeks or even another very strong supporter of Israel in the Senate, Chairman Menendez, I think it makes clear that there does not have to be a binary choice in this moment. You have most Democrats strongly supportive of Israel and Israel's right to self-defense, who can also express concern about Palestinian rights and Palestinian safety while not conflating Palestinian people with a terrorist organization, Hamas. So I think we can do both at the same time and remain strongly supportive of Israel as it faces these attacks.
I'm curious if you on your response on how the Israeli government is handling the situation in terms of making sure that that support in the Capitol in Washington remains bipartisan, especially in sort of difficult times like these.
Well, I don't think that that is necessarily incumbent on the Israeli government to do, but what we have seen since the last U.S. administration is definitely an effort to ensure that support of Israel remains bipartisan and is based in our national security interests and that of our allies, of course, including Israel. Versus the last administration, the Trump administration, U.S. policy toward Israel was politicized. It was used for Donald Trump's own political gain. He made that very clear, including by saying that he moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem for the evangelicals, right? He was a political, kind of calculator. He was calculating every move as it related to Israel. And that is not how Joe Biden approaches policy. It's not how he approaches foreign policy. It's not how he approaches Israel. So this policy is not about politics. It's really about national security and defending Israel's national security interests. And I think the Biden administration has done an excellent job in maintaining close ties, close communication. As we know, the prime minister and president have been in touch frequently. And yes, President Biden did voice support for bringing about a ceasefire, but it's clear that the intensive and supportive and ongoing diplomatic efforts are really happening behind closed doors. That's also why the administration sent an envoy to Israel, who's also speaking with regional leaders that are going to be critical to ensuring that Hamas actually does agree to a ceasefire.
All right, Hallie Sofer of the Jewish Democratic Council of America, thank you for joining us on I-24 News.